Do you think your property taxes are too high, but the appeal process seems confusing, intimidating, or like you're about to mess something up? Today, I'm breaking down exactly how the Michigan property tax appeal process works, with a special focus on the city of Detroit. What your tax assessment letter really means, this one right here, and why reviewing it every single year matters, even when you don't appeal. My name is Jan Dykers. I'm a 20-plus year real estate veteran, Detroit area homeowner advocate, and a proud property tax nerd, self-described. I'm obsessed with helping homeowners understand their property taxes so that they can control their housing expenses. I have released multiple videos on this topic, and I host a yearly tax event called Property Tax Hacks around February of every year, where I bring in guest experts to break down the property tax system and the appeal process. My YouTube channel is about helping Michigan homeowners understand property taxes without fear, fluff, or intimidation. By the end of this video, you'll understand what you're actually appealing and what you're not, how the appeal process works step by step, what evidence matters and what doesn't, what kind of results you should realistically expect, and why reviewing your assessment notice every year is non-negotiable. What you are and are not appealing. Let's clear up the biggest misunderstanding right away. You are not appealing your tax bill. You are appealing your property value, which in turn generates a tax bill. Now, your property value influences your tax bill, but just because you feel your taxes are too high does not mean that you always have a case for appeal. Here are the numbers that matter most in the state of Michigan. Market value. This is what your municipal assessor believes that your home is worth. State equalized value, or SEV. It should be about 50% of the market value. And the taxable value. This is the number that your tax bill is actually based on. It can only go up 5% a year or the rate of inflation, whichever is less, and it gets locked in the year after you purchase your home. If any of these values are wrong, the taxes downstream of them will be wrong too. This is why appeals focus on value, not the amount of taxes that you pay. Why you must review this letter every year. Here's the part that homeowners miss. Most assessment problems don't start with huge jumps. Well, some of them do, but not always. They start with small errors. $10,000 here, $15,000 there. It might not feel urgent the first year, but assessments don't usually correct themselves, they compound. That slightly inflated value becomes the baseline for next year, and the next, and the next. 5 or 7 years later, your property is assessed on a value that never made sense to begin with. Most tax problems don't start big. They start by being ignored. That's why reviewing the letter matters, even when you don't appeal. Check out my video on how to read your assessment notice to be empowered to understand what you are being charged for. The appeal timeline. The process only works if you respect the calendar. So I'm going to go over the typical Michigan timeline, but always verify it locally. These dates are based on the city of Detroit, and there may be slight deviations for other municipalities. So January or February, the assessment notices are mailed. The city of Detroit in February has a special opportunity before the Board of Review to go through a preliminary assessor review. This is not required. This is an optional process, but it can help deal with preliminary problems to avoid you having to go to the Board of Review. In March, the Board of Review happens, and this is a mandatory meeting if you want to appeal your taxes. You have until the end of July to file. For the Michigan Tax Tribunal, if you are dissatisfied with the municipal Board of Review process. If you miss the March Board of Review, your options disappear until next year, except for some small exceptions with errors that the city may have made. Step by step, how the process works. Step 1, review your assessment notice. Compare your assessed value to the recent sale prices in the area. Take the state equalized value on your assessment notice, multiply it by 2. If that's more than your property is worth, you have an option. Request a record card from your local assessor. Look for errors in square footage, property condition, number of bathrooms, and room count. These are all reasons because of error, because of changes that your property has gone through, that the property may be overassessed. Maybe you removed a bathroom. Maybe you knocked down a porch. Or maybe the assessor just had the information incorrect. Step 2, file your appeal. You can do this online, by mail, or in person. I recommend online because there's a paper trail of proof that you applied. If you send it by mail, make sure that you have some sort of receipt, some sort of certified mail or courier service where you have a receipt that shows that you sent it in the mail. Now, you can't 100% verify what you sent, but you at least have proof that you sent. If you file in person, make sure you walk away with a stamped copy proving that you submitted the document. When going through your appeal process, when you're filling out your request for appeal, make sure you read every line item of instructions very carefully. And if you're not sure, ask questions. This, I think, is where people get tripped up, especially when you have more than one property to appeal. If you don't put in a request to appeal each individual property, when you get to the board of review or the hearing, they may not, and they probably will not, allow you to discuss more than just the first property. Now, if you're going to the preliminary assessor appeal in the city of Detroit and you appeal on the late side of that window, you may not receive a response from that before your deadline to apply for the board of review. So just keep that in mind. If you're going through the assessor review process, do that on the early side. Otherwise, you may just have to go straight to the board of review just to protect yourself. When you go to the board of review, and I'm speaking strictly about the city of Detroit because that is the experience I have sat through multiple reviews. You can do this online or you can do this in person, but make sure you have proof that you scheduled your appointment. I have been sitting in some assessor reviews where they skip over the person's appointment because they lost record of it. There are always ways to fix this, but it may take a little bit of work on your end. So just make sure you have the proof that you requested your appointment and you were granted your appointment for appeal. Step 3, present evidence. Once you have your scheduled appointment, you need to be prepared. This is not a speech. This is a numbers conversation. Step 4, the decision. Sometimes, if we're talking about the assessor review, the preliminary review, you will get notice in the mail or by email. If you are at the board of review, you should receive the decision at the moment, and then it will be followed up with a letter notifying you of your appeal. If you have done this by Zoom or online, then there will be a record of your appointment recorded. But just make sure you keep detailed records, because if for some reason what you receive in the mail differs from what you remember discussing in the actual appeal, you will want to verify this information and make sure it's correct. You could be approved, denied, or receive a partial adjustment for your request. What evidence actually works? This is where being a tax nerd pays off. Strong evidence includes recent comparable sales. Usually your assessor uses a 24-month period of sales to determine value. So find out what is most important to them. Look for homes similar in age, size, condition, and in the same neighborhood. Bring photos or send photos showing deferred maintenance of the property. Things in the property that would have a change in the condition that the assessor has on record. If the square footage is different than what the assessor has on record, or some of the components of the home are wrong, then having an independent appraisal will definitely help alert the assessor that the property that they are reviewing is different than the one you actually own. And look at the accuracy of what the city has on file in their record card: square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, garage, property condition. Weak evidence includes, skip this part, my taxes went up a lot. Not a really good argument. Showing screenshots from Zillow without any context. Neighbor complaints about your house, or emotional arguments. These all do not work. Assessors respond to data, not frustrations. And the Board of Review is often made up of other citizens. They do not work for the city. They are a third party. And so they're just trying to get through life, just like you and I. So showing them kindness and a little bit of grace and respect is going to go a long way. If you get upset with them because you're mad about the process, it's the fastest way to end your appeal session. Realistic results. What to expect. Let's reset expectations. Most appeals result in moderate adjustments. Some years, the assessment is already correct, but an error of the official records could result in a value change. A win might look like a reduced state equalized value that does not actually affect your taxable value and therefore does not actually lower your taxes. However, this would reduce the maximum amount that your taxable value could go up to, and it could also put you in a good position to sell your property if you plan to do that in the near future. A reduced state equalized value that does result in a reduced taxable value because that state equalized value goes lower than your taxable value. That would actually result in a change to your tax bill. And preventing a future spike in taxes by getting your state equalized value into the right shape. Buyers are always looking at the state equalized value to understand what their taxes would be for the next year. So if your state equalized value is higher than it should be, even if it doesn't affect your bill because your taxable value is so low, could prevent buyers from being interested in your property based on the assessment. Sometimes the biggest win is not a refund, but it's stopping the next big increase. When to escalate beyond the Board of Review. If the value is clearly wrong and the Board of Review says no, your next option is the Michigan Tax Tribunal. This is a more formal process. You're talking to a third party at the state versus someone that's on a board with the city, which is where you're trying to appeal. There's more documentation involved. The timeline is longer. This will probably last through the summer when your taxes are already due to be paid, most likely. You present your case and the city assessor presents theirs. The judge would prefer if the two of you settled, but you will get a hearing if you can't come to an agreement. And this is where professional guidance makes the biggest difference. So consulting with a tax attorney, even if they don't actually represent you at the hearing, can often help give you just enough of the information you need to ensure your appeal is successful. Here's the property tax nerd summary. You appeal value, not taxes. Deadlines matter more than opinions. Evidence beats emotion. Small wins compound over time. You don't need to appeal every year, but you must review every year. Property taxes are math, not magic. If this information was at all helpful to you, hit like and subscribe. Doing that tells YouTube that this information matters to homeowners or future buyers just like you. And drop a comment if you've gone through the appeal process before and let me know what your experience is like. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.